Hi, welcome to the midweek menu. I'm your host, Denise Barrett, registered dietitian with Vine Nutrition. And today we're going to talk all about apples. And I just wanted to share a little bit about some of the new things I learned about apples and teach you or share with you 3 recipes using apples as a savory food rather than desserts. We tend to have, if you're like me, we tend to have so many dessert recipes for apples that I probably don't have enough days in my life to prepare all of those recipes, but we have very few recipes that are savory. So I have a variety of apples that I'll tell you a little bit more about in just a minute, but I wanted to talk about the different types of apples. There are apples that start coming off the trees in September. So most of the ones I'm talking about today are early apples. Then there's later apples that come off the trees in October. And some of them even can be stored throughout the winter. And old timers used to call those keeper apples. But most of the apples we get at the grocery store are not heritage heirloom apples. And so I'm going to be sharing with you a few varieties that are available now. And hopefully you can be on the lookout for them at your local orchard. And I actually got all these apples at Freeman Orchard in Henderson, North Carolina. But you can find some of these growing where you live too if you don't live in Western North Carolina. But this apple is really a cool apple. It's called a Wind River. And many of these apples have been around a few hundred years. So this is one of the older apples that I came across. This is actually my favorite apple of all. It's the Jonathan apple. And then this is the Cortland apple. It's been around a long time too. This came from England actually, and we have been eating it ever since it probably came over in the 1700s. And it is called the Golden Russet. And then this is and I may be mispronouncing it for anybody that's an apple expert, but I would call it a Mancoon. So that is one of the older apples too. And this one is an Ida Red. So we're going to be using these in our recipes, but these are all apples that you may not be as familiar with that you can be on the lookout at the local orchards. Now, one thing about apples that grow where you live, they're only going to be available for a short time, but their flavor and just their historic value and the fact if we eat them and keep them more in circulation by asking for them is going to keep them around a few hundred more years, if not longer. So I want to share a little bit about some of the recipes I put together, and a couple of them I've already made. But this is actually an apple chili. You may not eat a lot of apple chili, but it's got fresh local apples. I did peel them, but if you like the peeling on the apple, you could leave them unpeeled. And then I added sweet potato, and this is actually a vegetarian recipe that you may like to have, or you can add some meat to it if you wish. Now, I like to have corn chips with my chili, and I made an avocado red onion, although you could use green onion, and cilantro garnish. So it's really pretty, really colorful, and really, really tasty. So I hope that you give it a try. If you're looking for that recipe, you can access it at VineRipeNutrition.com and then just sign up for the recipes and seasonal menu ideas. and that will be up later today. I don't have it up right now, but I will be sending it to you. And if for some reason you don't get it, just email me and I will be happy to make sure that you receive it. The next thing that you may have never done with apples is make a quesadilla. So that's what I'm going to be making next. And actually I'm going to move the cutting board over here. So what you would do for this is you would actually use apples and you'll just thinly slice them. You could also grate them, and if you look on my website at Vine Ripe Nutrition, you can also access an apple salsa. So when the tomatoes go out, then you can use apples in some fresh salsa if you like that raw salsa. And really, when you add it with the hot pepper and also the lime juice, you will not necessarily miss the tomatoes. It's very delicious. So I just shredded some cheese and put it on a tortilla, and next I'm gonna layer the thinly sliced apples to that, and then you would just grill it like you would grill a quesadilla. You could add other things in there, like if you wanted to add some cilantro or add a little bit of salsa in there, that would be okay too. But I'm actually going to show you how I already grilled it up. And it's a beautiful way to serve your apples. And I'm just going to add a little salsa to the top. You could sprinkle with a little cilantro. You could even put some chopped avocado on it. But it's very tasty. My inspiration for this was from a restaurant in St. Louis that actually used pear, but they used brie. And you could use brie, but cheddar is ideal for pairing with an apple. So that's what I used this time. So the last thing I'm going to make is a seasonal fall salad. And this recipe is actually on my blog. If you just look under apple cabbage slaw. And what I've done today is I've made it really colorful by adding chopped kale, which really pairs well with chopped cabbage. And then I added red cabbage. So it's already colorful. And I'm just going to even make it more colorful by chopping up just a little bit of apple. So you've got the purple, you've got the light green, and then you've got the red. So I'm just chopping up some apples, and then I'm going to show you how to make the dressing. Some apples are more the type of apples that you could eat fresh. And then some of them are going to be more baking apples or just cooking apples. So you might want to pair the apples. Some are going to be more crisp. Some are going to be less crisp. For instance, the Jonathan that I mentioned that was my favorite, it is very crisp. It is very tart, but it's sort of a sweet tart. And it is just lovely. They're going to be, this one for instance, Wind River, which I talked with you a little bit ago, it is coveted by a lot of local chefs here in the Asheville area because it is a sauce apple. But what the chefs like about it is they don't have to overbrown their crisp to make sure their apples are done. The apples get soft ahead of time. So doing a little research on your apples, maybe even talking to the people who own the orchard, who know some of their varieties of apples, you could tell them some of the uses that you are looking for. So I'm just going to add the apples here. And I'm not going to stir it too much yet because I'm going to make a noise here. I'm just going to add the ingredients to this curate and make the salad dressing. So I added a little salt, and you can adjust it to your taste and to your health needs. A little pepper, and then I'm using some balsamic in here. So it's going to be really flavorful. And this balsamic happens to be a little bit sweet, but you could actually add a little honey to the dressing too if your balsamic's a little bit tart. And then I'm going to add the olive oil. So you've got a lot of flavor going on with the balsamic and the mustard. And next I'm going to shake it up, and then we're going to mix it. So it's a little thick because it's sort of like a slaw dressing. Okay, so I'm just going to add it. And then I'm just going to stir it up. And you can see it is full of color and full of flavor, so it will go almost with everything you have this fall as a side. You can have it at a barbecue or a tailgate. You could even have it for Thanksgiving. You could have it for a weekend supper, or you can have it for a weeknight supper. It's really great leftover too, because the vinegar and the mustard just sort of preserve the apple and just keep it fresh for several days. And it's one of those things where the second day it can even be better. So I hope that you love it, and you can just access it on the Vine Rack Nutrition site. So today we've talked about making a chili. We've talked about making the quesadillas. And we've made the slaw. So you have 3 things that you may not typically think of when you use apples in your cooking or baking. And next week we will actually be talking about tailgating and fall picnics, and I'll just have some ideas for you that you can take on the road. But since it is a midweek menu, you can also use it for your supper idea too. So thank you for tuning in. If you're in the path of Hurricane Florence, like I am not in the direct path, but I'm sort of indirectly affected. So if you're in that path, be safe. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And thank you for stopping by.